Here's a fun fact for you. I've been dabbling in game development for several years now. I started with the Source engine because I've been trying on and off to make a Portal 2 mod for a while, but that's a subject for another video. I've also messed around with Unity and Unreal Engine, although more so with Unity because I don't think my computer likes Unreal very much. Anyway, I've been itching to actually finish a game for a while, but because I've been caught up with Source and its instabilities, I've always been a long way from actually achieving that. So, when I went down a bit of a rabbit hole into a specific subject, which I'll elaborate more on in a later devlog, I decided to make a game around that idea. So, without further ado, I proudly present the first episode of what I've lovingly titled F11 Smashes Their Head Against a Wall, aka F11's Adventures in Game Dev. Okay, where to begin? I briefly mentioned that I started this game based on a certain inspiration, but I don't think I'm going to share what that inspiration is until I get to the visual design, since that's the majority of what I'd be talking about in that video. Instead, this installment is going to be about the basic mechanics. So I'll start where I started programming. The first thing you gotta have in any game is player movement, so I sat down to get coding, and oh yeah, I don't know C#. Or, I didn't. See, I've followed plenty of tutorials over time to the point where now I know enough to get by when I'm doing things myself, but for something as critical as player movement, I didn't want to take that chance. So, in the current build of the game, there are two scripts that are not mine. There is the player movement script, which is entirely from this tutorial, and the object grabbable script, which started from this tutorial, but I have since added a lot of functionality to the boxes, and I just wrote it all into the object grabbable script because it made things easier to deal with. So, both of those are in the description of this video, and they were very helpful. In the final game, I will rewrite the code that I got from them, because I just have reservations about publishing code that I feel like I stole, but they worked well, so I'm glad they were out there, and they definitely helped me properly get started. So, player movement? It works. Picking up a box? It works. Now for the interesting things. To get to that, I had to answer the question, what is this game supposed to be? Well, it's going to be a first-person puzzle game, similar to that of the aforementioned Portal 2, but obviously it won't have portals as the main mechanic, or at all, because this is going to be an original game. So, first things first, the boxes. They aren't just button holders like in Portal, and they're not laser pointers either, since I don't think I'll be adding anything like that. What they are is batteries. Let me explain. The main puzzle loop of this game will center around the boxes and these ports. There are two types of ports, in and out. No, not that one. The out ports will provide charge to a cube when it is plugged in. With that charge, the cube can be plugged into an in port, and it will activate something in the level. It could open a door, raise a staircase, or anything else like that. That was the main thing, and once I got that set up, I realized I didn't really know what else I needed. There was one more thing I had in mind, but I added it at the end, so I'll explain it at the end. Anyway, I needed to decide what I really wanted to implement. So I spent some time in a Google document, and I made an itemized list of the mechanics in Portal 2. I know that sounds bad, but I never intended to use those mechanics. I just figured that if I could have a number of the minimum amount of mechanics needed to make a complete feeling puzzle game, then I wouldn't have to stress as much about whether or not I had enough things. With that number set, my count was 13, but it'll differ based on how specific you are, I made a separate table where I added my own plans for the game. With the table complete, it was back to programming. Now, obviously I couldn't be programming all day every day. I have a life and important things to do, but I did find time in my days to shirk those responsibilities a little and try writing code in that Google document. Of course, it was guesswork, and when I tried to put the code in the game, it required a fair amount of editing before it worked. But eventually, it worked. Oh yeah, I need to explain what worked. Number 1, or 3, I guess, or really 6 because I already have the player, cube, in-out ports, and the door, but whatever. The next thing was magnets, or electromagnets, more accurately, since they can be turned off. These magnets will function as an obstacle throughout the levels, taking your cube away if you happen to walk through their field. Right now you can retrieve your cube because I haven't made a mechanism to reset them, but in the final game, at least as is planned right now, the magnets will keep the cubes, forcing you to respawn them or disable the magnet. After that, it was time for floor buttons. Floor buttons? Aren't those from Portal 2? Yeah. They're totally different here though. I'm serious. Okay, well, not totally different. At a base level, they do the same thing. You stand on it, it powers something. In this case, a door. You can also hold it down with a box. The difference here is that some buttons will have to be charged before they can actually power anything. Look here at the test level. I can stand on the button, but it doesn't do anything. So I have to charge it. How? Well, I can take this cube, plug it into this port to charge it, and then plug it into this port to power up the button. And now the door is closed. I only powered the button, remember? Now that the button is charged, I can stand on it, and it's open! Okay, that's maybe not the most interesting, but that code worked on like the first try, so I'm particularly happy about it. Then I made these cube variants. I call them kill cubes, and the concept is based on these things called killer keys. Yeah, I watched The Lockpicking Lawyer. What about it? The point is, these kill cubes can be plugged into ports, but they cannot hold any charge, so they can't power anything. They aren't magnetic, and they cannot activate any of the in ports, but they can still be placed on buttons. The point of them is to block off ports in certain instances where you may be forced to plug a box in, but you don't want to activate the connected system. Maybe the door will close when activated, or a wall will push you to a different room. I don't know yet, and honestly, if the puzzles with these aren't interesting enough, they probably won't make the cut. We'll see. Now, there is the last element I implemented, but before I got to that, I did quite possibly the worst thing one can do when working on their game. I call it the Great Mistake, which will probably be in the title of this video. So, I updated the Unity Hub, which, if you don't know, is basically the application that lets you open your Unity projects. And I noticed something when I opened it back up. There was a little flag, and it looked problematic. So I clicked on it, and it told me that the version of the editor that I was using had a security risk. Well, that's not good. It told me to update it before publishing, and although I'm plenty far away from publishing the game, I figured it's probably better to get that out of the way now. I've been using Unity 5, but hey, why not get access to the newest technology? Unity 6 was available, and it even had this flag that said recommended. I haven't made a backup, but what's the worst that could happen? I installed it and opened my project in the new editor, and what the heck is this? Yeah, so basically, as far as I understand, the Unity team overhauled their lighting system for Unity 6. That's generally a good thing, but for such a newbie developer as myself, it was more annoying and confusing. I looked into it a bit, but the solutions that I found would require more effort than I wanted to spend on lighting that worked perfectly well before. So, after fiddling with it for a while and coming up hopeless, I did the next thing you're not supposed to do. I downgraded the project back to the old engine, again without a backup because apparently I refused to learn from my mistakes, but to an update of Unity 5 that fixed the security issue. The thing about this rapid-fire engine switching is that it is generally a pretty good way to completely corrupt your game. Thankfully, that didn't happen to me, although when I reopened it, the engine told me to use safe mode. That's not a good sign. Well, let's see what safe mode does. Turns out safe mode just takes away the game view, so you can use the editor and your normal inspector views, but it never compiles the game so as not to cause major problems. In safe mode, there were two main issues that were repeated several times, and these issues were what forced me into safe mode. The problems were in my player movement script, the one I stole from the tutorial, the one I haven't touched since it started working, and the one that worked perfectly fine in the engine before. What was wrong? In the code, I had repeatedly called for two specific properties, rigidbody.linear velocity and rigidbody.linear damping. The velocity one is self-explanatory, it just outputs the player's current velocity, and the damping one functionally just emulates drag. The problem is, these actually weren't the properties I called. I called rigidBody.velocity and rigidBody.drag. These were updated to the aforementioned properties when I moved to Unity 6. Unfortunately, downgrading technically isn't supported, so when I moved back to Unity 5, they stayed in their Unity 6 forms. Thankfully, I just had to find and replace the properties back to their Unity 5 counterparts. It works. For a brief period of time, I got this compiler error when I opened the engine after everything. It didn't stop me from running the game, but it was a little bothersome. To fix it, I just had to go into this XML and remove the lines that told the engine to use the updated Unity 6 features that Unity 5 didn't recognize. With that, there was no more error. Now it was time to program the last major mechanic. It's a warning signal. That's it. Okay, that's not it. It goes with the other obstacle in the game, hidden danger. The little remote in your hand will make this gross noise, which is probably not final, whenever you approach an area of danger. Call it magic, radiation, bad smells, whatever else. These danger zones can and will kill you, so pay attention to that warning signal. It might just save your life. Along with the warning remote, I made these terminals that require you to give up said remote momentarily. They will also activate doors, panels, etc., although I plan for them to be on a timer, at least probably most of the time. So yeah, I used Adobe Illustrator to block out some levels, built a prototype version of the game, and then had some of my friends and family members test it. The test went interestingly. To put it simply, the game is kind of a buggy mess, but it is beatable the intended way. There's a few soft locks, most notably this one, where you can get pushed out of the map, but that one can be fixed by reshaping the level a little bit, and the other soft locks just involve losing your cube, which will be fixed when I add in some kind of respawn mechanism like these ones from Portal. The other major issue is that my save function just doesn't work about 50 to 75% of the time for some reason. I stole it from about 3 different tutorials that all said the same thing, and it's a really simple script, so I can't imagine what is wrong, but obviously something is. The data is stored properly, but the player just doesn't load back in properly at all. Clearly, I've still got a long way to go before I can call the game done, but I've made a lot of progress in a short time, and I'm proud of that. Right now, I'm going to be doing a lot of bug fixing based on the feedback I got from my friends, and the next devlog will probably be about that process. As for this devlog, it's done. You did it. You made it. That's the video. I really have nothing else to say now, except I'm F11, and you can exit full screen now.